Before we begin, make sure you're in a quiet space. Grab some headphones, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself for some of the most chilling ghost stories you've ever heard. These tales are not for the faint of heart. If you want to hear more horrifying encounters, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It was supposed to be a quick stop, just a place to rest on the way to a much-needed vacation. But what I didn't know was that the room I had booked would become a nightmarish experience that I'll never forget. It all started when I checked into a small, rundown hotel in the middle of nowhere. The lobby was dimly lit, and the air had a strange, stale odor to it. The receptionist, a pale woman with tired eyes, handed me the key to room 304, and that's when things started to feel off. As I made my way down the narrow hallway, I could hear faint whispers, but when I looked around, there was no one there. I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the feeling of being watched kept growing stronger. I pushed open the door to my room, and the first thing that hit me was the cold, an unnatural cold, almost like a draft was coming from somewhere. I tried to brush it off and settled into the bed, telling myself it was just an old building. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. The room was freezing, and the soft whispers were now clearer. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew louder and louder until they became full sentences. "Help me, please." The voice sounded so real, so desperate, that I felt my heart race. I couldn't move, paralyzed by fear. And then, I saw her. A woman, dressed in an old-fashioned gown, standing at the foot of the bed, staring at me with hollow eyes. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The woman just stood there, not moving, not blinking. I felt like I was being suffocated by her presence. I must have passed out from sheer terror, because the next thing I knew, I woke up the next morning, drenched in sweat, and the room was completely warm again. But when I checked out, I asked the receptionist about the woman in my room. She only gave me a knowing look and said, "You're not the first one to ask about her." Later, I did some research, and it turns out that a woman had died in that room many years ago under mysterious circumstances. No one had ever been able to explain the cold spots or the eerie whispers, but now I knew. The ghost of that woman would never leave room 304. This next story is one I'll never be able to explain. It happened when I was younger, during a camping trip with my friends in the woods. We decided to go off the beaten path away from the main campsite to explore a little more. We stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin deep in the woods. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, and something about it felt wrong. We decided to make camp near the cabin, thinking it would be a cool spot to set up our tents. As night fell, we sat around the campfire, telling stories and laughing. But as the fire flickered low, I noticed something moving in the distance, just outside the circle of light from the campfire. At first I thought it was an animal, maybe a deer or a raccoon, but the shape was, too tall, too human. I nudged my friend, who turned around, and she saw it too. A figure standing completely still, just watching us. It was hard to make out details, but the figure seemed to be wearing something dark like a cloak. The strange part was it was completely silent. No rustling of leaves, no crunching of twigs. We stared at it for what felt like forever, but before any of us could say anything, the figure disappeared into the woods, like it had melted into the darkness. We laughed it off as our minds playing tricks on us. But the next night, the same thing happened. The figure appeared again, but this time it was much closer. I could see its features more clearly now. A tall, thin man with dark, hollow eyes. He didn't move. He just stood there staring at us. We were paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to speak. Then it vanished again. But this time something changed. We didn't feel like we were alone. We felt like we were being followed, watched, even as we packed up and left the woods the next morning. None of us spoke about it again, but we all knew, whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. To this day, I still feel its presence when I'm near the woods, and sometimes I think I hear footsteps behind me, just out of sight. Thank you for listening to these spine-chilling stories. If you want to hear more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your own ghostly encounters. And remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones that follow you home.